Wow, how time does fly by. We've almost ended step 2. We just gotta go on a road trip and have some dinner. Let's get into it. I forgot about that. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity, as both your family and Coves prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street, just outside your house, was a massive RV camper. So big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days, to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. You glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had been a mixed bag for him. But it was only 3 days, so it seemed he was dealing with it the best he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping load everything in. And you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand, a large bottle of water in the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. I'm gonna need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. You could relate to Ma. It was way too early. You yawned and rubbed your eyes, still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside was still damp from dew, and that helped make you a bit more alert. And then at the end of the chain came your sister. You had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on.
Ugh.
I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Kelly is the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make it fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior. The sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on her obligations to them, her objections with them. There was the main area of the RV with a couch, a loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed, Kyra on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. You're excited to sleep in the loft. It would be a new experience for you and sounded kind of cool. Alright, you lot. Does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bed hair bouncing behind her as she went. Matt came over and gave you a smile, setting her hands on her hips. How about you, Callie? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries, deodorant, floss? Anything else you can think of? You were confident you had it all, wanting to make sure to stay organized. Wanting to make sure everything was organized and ready to go, you had packed the night before and set your alarm too. Yep, I'm good. That's great. We'll have to wait for the ones who weren't as organized, but we'll be heading off shortly. With a few minutes to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow, and a blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also packed more personal things, such as a portable gaming console. The drive to the Redwood National Park would take an entire day, one way, so you wanted to make sure you had something to entertain yourself while traveling there and back. Pencils and paper. You had to be prepared in case you saw something to sketch at the park, or if you wanted to write something down, or if you just needed to pass the time just doodling. Your favorite stuffed animal. Without fail, it always made you feel more comfortable whenever you went somewhere new. It was like taking a little piece of home away with you. A couple of things to read. You had packed one of your old favorites and a new one you'd never tried before. You knew you'd have plenty of time for both of them on such a long drive. A ball. It was fun to break out a ball to play around with in the field behind your house, so you thought everyone might enjoy having something to do at the park. Your camera. It was just a little pocket camera you'd gotten from your mom's, but you couldn't miss the opportunity to take some new snaps. An MP3 player with headphones. With so much time going to be spent driving in a car, you wanted to make sure you'd have something to play music on. The pajama shirts Cove gave you. And you wanted to have something comfortable and special to wear on the trip. Like this. And you wanted Cove to know you were still using it. And that was everything. Hey, let me take that for you, Callie. I'll store it in the RV. There's a few spots left still thin. You let Kyra take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finishing packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartments of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away and you were together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, the bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole deal now. Usually she wasn't one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV or food or to leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her. But it was a nice surprise. You suppose any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. Cliff had been pretty quiet so far, and more than anything seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. You weren't very excited for the trip either. You liked being at home and would rather find things to do around your town. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kyra were huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the journey was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out the driver area, leaving Clove's dad to deal it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax, too. Time slipped by as the morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few minutes as Cliff climbed out of the driver's seat, and Mom took over. Matt was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial of the controls, as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. I still love those sunglasses. I want something like that now. We're making good progress. Yeah, maybe you should take a quick nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place.
Nah.
I don't need sleep. Wait, I want that sound again.
Nah.
I don't need sleep. I've still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point about how resilient he was home. And Kyra rolled her eyes in amusement. Dad, everyone has to sleep. Cliff shook his head at the tough guy act. Though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair.
So?
Are you going to be driving it again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth, right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kyra laughed light-heartedly.
Don't worry about that.
Lucky for all of us, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. We won't be driving again until tomorrow. We shouldn't gang up on the poor guy. Thank you. At least someone here is on my side. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks like it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants. That's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old. I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kyra wrinkled her nose and thought.
Hey!
Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her, while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held on to the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze atop your head before a weight settled on your purple hair. When you tilted your chin up carefully to look, you heard the rustling of the bag of chips and realized Elizabeth rested the end of it on your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. You took a handful. Reaching up, you scooped up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. You halfway munched away as the conversation continued on, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by, with the group of you chatting and playing games and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and setting up the night. Matt was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others, as she made her way back to the back room. You had all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after you had arrived at your destination and found a spot to park in the rest of your stay. Given a look across the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep curled in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kyra was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kyra herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden needed to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you, before crawling into bed with them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing.
Good night.
Get a good rest, Callie. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
That's fantastic.
I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There'll be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake a little longer, while your mums whispered about the park and the forest in general. With the sound of their voices in the background, you eventually nodded off to sleep. The next morning you were up bright and early preparing for the day ahead. You had slept terribly. There hadn't been enough room for you to spread out or readjust your position. The mattress was uncomfortable, and it became hot with two other people next to you. Ma whined about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own, as others were doing the same thing. Fred was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you stopped listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the looks of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted nothing was missing from them. It didn't take much longer until you exited the RV in a bustle, and headed into the Redwood National Park. Wow. Cliff had his head tilted up towards the canopy of the trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person.
Come on.
Smile, you two. You spent time for Kyra to snap a picture of you and Cove together, before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protests that she should just enjoy the moment. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some information she had read about the park in a brochure. Ma happily listened while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come here and work as a tour guide if you know so much about the place. Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She must be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. You were embarrassed that the adults were being so touristy. A few other people crossed your path as you walked along, and every time you tried to separate yourself from the group more and more, becoming increasingly embarrassed by the overexcitement. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she found place between you two. And immediately you could tell by her expression she was going to say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. You threw her arms out, speaking with genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. First smiled at her, even if it was a little awkwardly, and continued walking along. Just watch. Next year they'll be talking about their new The next new amazing idea. She got on a big voice, deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think how much it would save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Hope simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You suppose he was used to this by... You suppose he was just used to it by this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave Yonkov a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll be related. Legally, anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. Maybe. I guess you and me could get married, Elizabeth.
What?
What? Me? Yeah. That way Kelly would be my sibling-in-law. That would be fun. Elizabeth stuck out her tongue at Cove, as if the idea was ridiculous. I'll marry you, Cove. We must unite our family ties to increase the pull in the community. A political marriage. It might be alright with you. Then it's an agreement.
Sure.
Okay. Elizabeth poked out her tongue at the both of you, giving you a sour look. She walked ahead, obviously not getting the responses she was looking for. And you and her swapped amused looks. Right, so we might be getting married to Curve in the future. The day continued on, with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would like to try out, if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing. But Matt said that would have to wait for another trip. It was a little strange during the walk that you sat beside, and sat out for picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You'd even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half... It's so funny every time just reading it. That grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. You thought the trip wasn't long enough. You thought the trip wasn't worth only one day here. What you saw today was only a fraction of what the park offered, and you wondered why Co's parents hadn't planned a longer trip. You sighed quietly to yourself, wondering if you'd get the chance to come back. Your group made it back to camp, just as the sun was setting in the sky, and the sky were appearing one by one. You had enjoyed different parts of it. You traded stories of what you thought while eating dinner, and afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back in the RV early, and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey and while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. You hung out with Cove. You might as well get comfortable. Who knows how long they'll be out for. You took a seat on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot. And it's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. I don't mind either way. I just dress depending on the weather or how I'm feeling at the time. I've smiled lightly at you and nodded. I've noticed. You asked him what he liked to see others wear. Hey, what kind of things do you think are nice to see on another person? Kurt's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he had even had a chance to have a proper think about it. Nothing! That was funny. You laughed out loud, and Kurt gave you a dirty look. Come on, that's not what I meant. You composed yourself and sat straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. Answer with what you do mean then. Isn't there anything you think looks good when you see it on someone? Kurt mumbled under his breath, and you couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. I swear, I won't make fun of you. That's not really it. Kurt seemed pretty grumpy about your statement, but you weren't ready to give it up so easily. Please? Kurt sighed and looked down at his lap where he was fidgeting with his hands, still reluctant to give an answer.
I don't know.
I don't know. He made an unimpressed sound over how this was going. Are you sure? Fine. I guess I kind of like ankle bracelets. Ankle bracelets? Yeah. Everyone can wear a pretty bracelet. Wrist ones are cool too. But they're pretty normal. There is something fun or flirty about ankle bracelets.
I mean...
It's more special or something. I don't know how to explain it. Kurt brushed his knuckles against his cheek awkwardly, seemingly unsure where to go from here. I like them too. Kurt smiled, happy to hear he wasn't the only one who felt that way. When he said nothing else, you took a moment to gather your own thoughts. Maybe you would wear your anklets more now. You had a couple of different ones at home. With this new knowledge, you might slip them into your daily outfits in the future. Kurt looked away again, feeling awkward about this. You gave him an understanding look, and soon enough he was smiling like normal again.
Alright.
Wow. Now you have your answer too. What do you like for another person? Muscles. Kurt chuckled as though you had said something highly amusing. Good luck. I hope you find someone. With that, the topic abruptly dropped off. Kurt officially had no more to say on that. The parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out of the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived, and within the blink of an eye, as the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final run to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be need for them all to get up. Now was the time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You as well as everyone else were confident you had it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room while you climbed up to the loft. Cliff and his family situated down below, the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. You knew it was hard to believe the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you would be back in your own bed at home. You felt that the trip was a waste of time. The amount of time it took to get here and get back didn't seem to be worth it, and you felt that the trip was spent stuck in the RV wasn't a very good one. The minutes ticked by silently, and it It didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kyra to drift up to you. They were asleep now. I wonder if Cove was still awake and decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked in the dark. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove laying on his back, his eyes staring up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out in his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him, because suddenly his eyes locked on yours. It was difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out a crooked smile on his face well enough. He made a silly face. Cove rolled his eyes at you, or at least you thought he did. Then you gestured him to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow and froze like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Eventually he managed to maneuver away around his sleeping dad, and make it to the ladder at the bottom rung, where he looked up at you and whispered. He opened his mouth to speak before it shut closed for another second. Is that my shirt? Uh-huh, I use it a lot. That's cool. Then Cove shook his head to refocus.
So...
Why'd you call me? You invited him up into the loft. Do you want to come up? His eye widened, just so. You could tell because he had come to where you were. Cove glanced behind him quickly at his sleeping parents before turning back to you. Okay. He broke out into a grin and scooched back as far as you could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. You understood how that felt, with the two of you in the loft together. There was barely any room to move. You laid down to each other on your sides, face to face. He got under the blanket a bit. One of his arms were nestled under his head for comfort. The other had nowhere to go, and was rested alongside his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly. So, what am I doing here? You can sleep here instead of the floor. Cove raised an eyebrow, not having expected you to bring that up now. It isn't a big deal for us to both be in the loft, right? Yeah, it's not some huge thing. We've shared 1,000,000 times by now, and usually they're the ones encouraging us. Cove gestured to the parents. Cove gestured in the direction of the parents, and you nodded. In agreement. They had always tried to put you and Cove together, ever since you were little. I wonder how much trouble we'll be in if we get caught. It wouldn't be nearly as much as we would have been if my mom found out you snuck into my room at the night of the start of summer. You weren't imagining it. I still can't believe I did that and didn't get caught. It was a very dramatic morning. You could easily picture his frantic escape in your mind's eye. You're kind of a troublemaker, aren't you, Cove?
I mean...
No, I don't think so. Cove trailed off. He seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. Hey, do you remember the first time I slept over at your house? He laughed quietly and nodded, the memory coming back to mind vividly. A smile grew on his face. I hated being in a different place back then, and wanted to leave. You had to sleep on the floor next to me so I'd feel better. You have to small laugh at the memory. We were such kids. Why didn't we share your bed if the plan was to sleep in the same spot anyway? I was trying to do the best I could. The sleeping bag was your sleeping place, and I just thought I needed to sleep where you were. You didn't give me a lot of time to think. You were trying to run out the door alone. Cove laughed quietly again, stifling the noise with his hand. His shoulders shook as he tried hard not to let it through.
Sorry.
I'm sorry I was like that. I just didn't take any more changes when I was little. You comforted him. You don't have to apologize. That wasn't your fault. You smiled at Cove, showing that it wasn't a problem. and he gratefully returned with one of his own. You spend the rest of the night smushed up in the little loft together, whispering about your past memories and trying not to giggle too loud at the silly things you'd gone up to over the years. Eventually, the chatting trailed off when you noticed Cove had drifted off to sleep. You followed soon after. When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it travelled the long journey home. You noticed you weren't as warm as you had been during the night, and when you checked next to you, Cove was gone. Blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft to find out where he'd gone. Maybe he snuck back to his spot on the floor during the night. However, you soon noticed him sitting on the couch, talking quietly with his mom. His head hung in embarrassment. Your movement gave you away, and Kyra suddenly looked up and caught your eye. He suddenly smiled amusingly at you, and it was obvious what happened. Cove hadn't gone away with it. They found him there in the loft, and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. You knew it was going to be a long, long time before you lived this one down, if you ever did. Soon your mums and Elizabeth emerged from their rooms dressed and ready for the day of travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Kyra suggested a few different travel games she used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. It was a bit too much for him to try speaking on, especially right now. You understood. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your own bed after the last few days. Everyone else must have been feeling the same, because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until morning. One time again, you went straight to your room and dropped onto your bed, shoes and all. You missed being near Cove. The two of you had basically been living together for 3 days. It was nice, but you knew it wouldn't be the last time the two of you would spend time together, and that thought comforted you. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow life would go on like normal. Sunlight shone through the windows as you sat in your living room. Your home phone pressed to your ear. Cove was on the other end. It had been shaping up to be an ordinary day, like any other, until Cove had called unexpectedly. He sounded unusually nervous greeting you. You listened silently as he kept talking. His words stilted. So, I was just, wondering, you want to come over to my house for dinner tonight? The question came out strangely, almost like he had rehearsed it a few times beforehand. Your eyes widened a little. He hadn't expected this to be the reason behind the call. Yeah, okay.
That's,
It was... Huh? Oh. Oops. That's... It seemed that Cove had... It seemed that Cove still had more to say, and you just interrupted him. Oops. Cool. Well... He stumbled for a bit, trying to gather his thoughts again. My mom and dad, they really want you to be here. If your parents don't have a problem with it, they asked me to ask you. You took a moment to think. Dinner at home would be quiet and uneventful today. If you really wanted to, you can go to Cove's instead. Cove spoke up again, breaking your thought train. His voice was softer than before. Also, I want you to be there too. Can you? Come over, I mean. Yeah, I can come. Thanks, Callie. I'll let them know when I can. He sounded noticeably relieved by your response. Was you coming over for dinner today that serious? He spoke to you a while longer to explain what time to come over and other details, then hung up. And that was that for now, anyway. Soon enough, the sun dipped out the sky and evening came. It was time for you to head to Cove's house. After letting Elizabeth know where you were leaving, she didn't look away from the TV, just grunted. You made a small journey across the street. You knocked a couple times on the heavy door to their condo. As you waited for an answer, you found yourself contemplating being a guest, while both of Cove's parents were there. The idea made you curious. You wondered why they decided to invite you out of the blue. Maybe you'd find out later tonight. You didn't get too much time with your thoughts, though. The door opened soon enough. Cove's mom, Kyra, stood in the frame, smiling warmly at you.
Come on.
Hey, Callie. Welcome. Please, come on in. She opened the door wider, moved to make room. You stepped inside, allowing her to shut it behind you. Thanks so much for coming over. I know this was kind of last second. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Of course. Just make yourself at home. It's not my home, but I've been given permission to say that. Hey, Callie. Welcome to our humble abode. You jerked your head towards the sound of Mr. Holden's voice. He waved at you briefly from the kitchen, with his back turned, a large spoon in hand. I hope you're hungry, because I'm whipping up a lot of tasty stuff. True to his words, you heard something sizzling on the stove. You closed your eyes and inhaled. It was something spicy and savory. With Mr. Holden busy and Cove nowhere to be seen, it was just you and Kyra. He gave you a wiry smile. He sure is. Well, I've been barred from cooking the entire time I'm staying here. Can you believe that? She nudged you with an elbow. Mr. Holden scoffed naturally. Then spoke from over his shoulder. You're on vacation, Kyra. You need to accept that already. She yelled back, amusement obvious on her face and in her tone. People still cook when they're on vacation. Everyone's gotta eat. It's not like I'm some celebrity who can go out for every meal or hire a private chef.
Sorry.
Well, in this house, you're a VIP. Kyra smiled and shook her head quietly. Then she turned to face you once more.
Well.
Sorry about that, Callie. Here I was trying to strike up a conversation with you, and Cliff just had to butt in. I don't butt in. She eyed him, chuckling in disbelief. He wasn't exactly disproving her point with that. Kyra leaned over to whisper to you. It's okay. Felling's being included. But since Clifford insists on cooking all by himself, he'll have to wait. The two of us can chat. The next question continued to be said in a hushed tone, just to be safe. So, how are you doing? I'm doing good. That's what I like to hear. She opened her mouth to say something more, but some light, pounding footsteps caught your attention. You checked to see Cove emerging from the hall a few moments later. He might have heard the commotion and left his room to see what was going on. He quickly took stock of the situation. Callie, you made it. Thanks for coming. Cove's voice was unnaturally loud, as if he thought you wouldn't be able to hear him from where you were, only a few feet away. Hi, Cove. You doing okay? Yeah, I'm fine. He didn't sound convinced at all. You narrowed your eyes suspiciously, but didn't call him out on it. If you could talk to him alone tonight, maybe you'd ask him what was going on then. It was when you glanced away from Cove that you spotted his parents watching the two of you interact. Cove noticed their stares too, meeting them with narrowed eyes.
So...
Are we having dinner now? Not yet, bud. I'm still cooking. Alright, I'm gonna go back to my room. As he turned to leave, he bent his head to the side to face you. You coming? The question was quiet, but you heard it clearly. You smiled, pleased that he had asked, and nodded in affirmation. Affirmative. Sorry. Cove fully turned and made his way down the hall. Have fun, you two. We'll call you when food's ready to go. With that, you followed after Cove. The two of you made your way down the hall. This is the first time you were invited to see Cove's room. Now, going over to Cove's room was a standard occurrence for you nowadays. Cove got to the door first, opening it and stepping inside. You joined him. There was a man on the floor in front of the door. As you stepped over the threshold into his room, you felt the crunch of sand beneath your feet. The sensation was nothing new to you, of course. Cliff constantly came back to his room covered in sand, not bothering to clean up after himself on the front door and go all over his personal space. That's just how he was, a little bit of a mess. You hadn't had Mr. Holden ever scold him for it. Not like your moms would have if you had done it. You can sit wherever you want. Cliff himself took a seat at the edge of his large bed, looking at the picture of comfort, and left you to decide. You sat next to Cove on his bed. Cove smiled when you made yourself at home beside him. He grinned back. With the sands growing, your gaze began to drift. You stared at the bright fish swimming in the tank. There were a bunch of them, floating to and fro in the open space. They stood out starkly against the green aquamarine plants. The green aquarium plants. You recall that Cove had owned fish since he was little, when his dad had gotten him some. He took care of them for them very seriously. They looked to be doing well still. Most of them were small, but there was one especially big one. What are the names? I don't name them. Well, not really. He lifted an eyebrow at that. He continued the explanation sheepishly.
I mean...
Mostly I call them based on what they look like. Square for a small one, tangerine for the really big orange one. That sort of thing. I've had a lot of fish, and I'm not good at coming up with names. He found that funny. Who knew that was a weakness of his? It was an entertaining revelation. Oh, a couple of them have other names. He pointed out to the small orangish red fish. It was minding its own business away from the others. My dad named her Dreamcatcher. The other one's Mark. Mum came up with that one. Cove smiled to himself, his eyes reflecting the glow of the tank. From the tank. Are there other people naming your fish?
It's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. He then turned to you, tilting his head to the side. There was a considering look on his face. You want to name one? Can I? His smile grew a little at your interest. Sure. There's a few that don't have names right now. The newer ones you can pick. But there are a few who don't have names right now. The newer ones. You can pick which one you want to name. You point each of the recent acquisitions out to you. The first was the smallest fish in the tank. It was completely orange and zipped all over the place, running laps around the others. The second was slightly bigger and red. His tail was dotted with black spots, which almost resembled freckles. The last fish was the biggest one. Its multicolored scales rippled under the bright lights of the tank, as it slowly made its way across the vast expanse. You went with the biggest fish. Cove only nodded at your answer, waiting on you to decide on a suitable name. You watched the fish you chose closely. As you did, a name eventually came to you. Frank, Sunbeam, Gil, Callie, Cove. Sunbeam. Cove laughed unreservedly at your choice. It was affectionate rather than insulting. You name things like my dad. Alright, it's Sunbeam. With that, his attention moved from you to the tank. He peered fondly at its inhabitants. You smiled proudly at Sunbeam as it swam through the tendrils of the plants, disappearing then reappearing soon after. You know, I'm not allowed to have pets in my house, not even a fish. The corners of Cove's lips turned down at that. That doesn't sound fair. It's not like a fish would make a mess in your house or anything. You just gotta take care of their tank and feed them. And they'll be okay. Right? My moms can be strict over the weirdest things sometimes. They're just Elizabeth and me to go around the neighborhood alone, but they won't let us have a pet? It doesn't make sense. Maybe when you're older they'll let you. I don't know, they seem pretty against it. Your current conversation brought to mind a memory from years ago. You launched into it without any warning, earning you a brief, confused look from Cove. But one time, Elizabeth, came back from playing at the beach and just shut herself in her room. She only came down for food, then she ran back upstairs straight after. It was kind of weird. My mom didn't think much of it at first, though. Then at night, Ma went into her room to say goodnight and started screaming. Mom and I ran over to see what happened. Lizzie had this huge lizard in her arms. Cove's eyebrows rose at that, and he leaned forward in interest.
Really?
A lizard? Where'd that come from? Elizabeth said she saw it half buried in the sand and didn't know what it was. Then she pulled it out and got its answer, so she brought it home. She had the lizard in her room for most of the day because she wanted to keep it. Mom and Matt were not happy. They worried about putting it out during the night, but she was going to have to let it go in the morning. Lizzie was really upset, but she did bring it back to the beach eventually. But she wouldn't talk to anyone for days. When she did get over it, it was almost like it never happened. You'll have to think about the time Elizabeth had always been stubborn, but when she was younger, she forgot grudges quickly. No, it wasn't so easy. Cove had been quiet for most of the story, apart from the reveal of the lizard. He had a thoughtful look on his face. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to have a sibling. You gave serious thought to his statement before you told him. It's a nice idea in general, but my sister is Elizabeth. Maybe if I had someone else as my sibling, I'd like having one more. Cove passed his lips at the words, considering them quietly for a while. That's interesting. I think your family is cool. He didn't have much else to say, though while on the topic of your family, you considered your relationship with your mums, too. They were absolutely the best. You couldn't even consider having another opinion. You couldn't have better parents. Well, to say what you want about them, but at least your mom's never tried to pay someone to be your friend. The thought prompted you to look over at Cove. You probably still didn't know that happened. You doubted that Mr. Holden mentioned it, and you never had. You wondered if you should tell him. It was long ago, and you were keeping a secret from Cove. You didn't tell him. It was a bad time. You could bring it up some other day, when the moment was right. Time passed, but you didn't really notice. The two of you were busy making plans for the rest of the summer, and chatting about your respective days. Eventually you heard a muffled holler from a different part of the house. You and Cove raised your heads in unison.
Oh.
It's time for dinner. Cove watched the firmly shut door he had been locked behind most of the night, but he didn't make a move to get up from bed. You couldn't see his face, so you didn't know what expression he was wearing. I'm glad you came. Cove peeked back to you from the side. It's been awkward. I get that. It's been hard on you, huh? You felt sympathetic towards him. You didn't know what he was going through, but you cared about him. Cove said nothing, and remained sat where he was. Now would be a good time as any to ask him why his parents suddenly wanted you to come over. Is there a reason they wanted me to come over tonight? It hasn't been awkward for me, just me. Sometimes it gets like this when no one else is around. No, you're here. Huh, you hadn't considered that. But it sort of made sense in a way. There was another shout from outside, too. Too muffled to actually know what the words were, but you can imagine what they were. Let's go. Cove finally got up, lumbering away with his shoulders sagged. You followed after him. Together, the two of you made your way back to the living room. As expected, Cove's parents were politely waiting for you at the kitchen table beside the windows overlooking the back of the house. Food had been prepared and set. Mr. Holden meaned as you and Cove took your places. I hope everyone's hungry. I cooked up a feast.
Yeah.
I know I am. Yeah. Cove's mumbled response wasn't nearly as upbeat as theirs. His parents didn't notice, or they pretended not to. Mr. Holden instead looked at you, grinning.
Thanks.
Let's all just take a moment to thank our special guest for being with us here tonight. I'm so glad you were able to make it, Callie, and on such short notice, too. You thanked Cove's parents back for inviting you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you both for inviting me.
Alright.
Well, that's it. Everyone, please, dig in. You can help yourselves to the food. Upon his encouragement, you looked over the meal spread out in front of you. There was a large garden salad in the center, surrounded by a variety of Mexican dishes. There are lots of sides and potential sauces to add. Quite a few had lots of cheese and sour cream, and the like. Whether you decided to indulge in those options or avoid them, you had brought your pills from home to help your lactose digestion. You're very happy about these options. You love Mexican food, and there were so many dishes to choose from. You were practically drooling. Utensils and plates scraped and clinked together as the group began filling their plates. Cliff, could you pass the salsa verde? Of course.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let me just say, you really outdid yourself tonight. I'm so jealous. Jealous of what? Your cooking's nothing to sneeze at, Kyra. Cove's parents made small talk, filling the space with what seemed to be barely any effort. You chimed in as well. Did it take you a long time to cook all this, Mr. Holden? Oh, not at all. Sure, this is more than I usually make for me and Co, but I enjoyed every second of it.
Aha.
Might have gone faster if you had some help, though. Co's mum grumbled, but it was light-hearted. Mr. Holden chuckled and shook his head. Not this again. I made the rules here, and I say guests don't cook. Even when they're staying for literal weeks.
Come on.
Even then. Everything looks great, Dad, as always. Thanks for it. Glad you think so. Cove smiled. It was genuine, even if it was strained at the corners. Brief silences interspersed the small talk. You held some food on your plate, waiting for your turn if someone was serving themselves a dish that you had your eye on. Once the food had been divided and things settled down, Cove's parents started talking again. Now then, you sat up in your seat when you noticed they were both looking at you.
How's it going?
How's everything been over at your house? Are your mum's well? You been keeping busy this summer? Or maybe you're just trying to take it easy during the break. You're more than happy to answer. Cove's parents seemed honestly interested to hear from you. You were kind of flattered by the attention. You told them how your mums were doing. They're the same as always. Work is a little stressful, but they said it's normal grown-up stuff and nothing to worry about. I know too well what that's like, unfortunately. You answered how things were at your house. It's good, is what you said, but you didn't mean it.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's wonderful. Felt a little bad for lying, but you'd rather not mention any issues you've had at home to Cove's parents. You mentioned the things you've done this summer. You should know what I've been up to, since so much has included your family. Mr. Holden laughed aloud and short. You caught him off guard with that. A fair point. And that was for your questioning answer. The question answering. Kyra nodded. You could tell she was actually listening to the words you were saying. She was trying to include you, not humor you. Did you know, Cliff, Callie's really into learning new things? Mr. Holden's face lit up, and he stopped eating so he could lean forward. His arms braced against the table. Right, my first playthrough, I got, writing. My second one was, I think it was playing instruments. And now I've got that. So yeah.
Nice work.
Oh, that's right. Very cool. Pyramid, I always pick the same items at the mall. It was always interesting to see what I get. I'm pretty serious about it. You are? At such a young age. That's really impressive. If you keep it in the time, I'm sure you can do something great. Thanks. Co's parents were definitely the encouraging type, but you could already tell that much about them. There was a lull in the conversation as everyone focused their attention on their respective plates. You noted not for the first time that Co's parents were the ones guiding the conversation. I wondered if you should break the silence this time. You brought up your own topic of conversation. I also like other things. Would you like to tell us more?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I looked eager for you to keep talking, so you did. The rest of the dinner continued just like that, with light conversation as you ate your meals. Eventually, all the dishes on the kitchen table were pretty much gone. Kyra set down her fork and rested her arms at her sides, letting loose a satisfied sigh. Her plate was completely empty.
Thanks.
That was delish. Thanks to your culinary creations, Cliff. Mr. Holden was like a flower soaking up the rays of sun. He beamed, flattered by the praise. You ate until you were satisfied. It had taken you some time to finish it all, but eventually you cleared your plate. Bo successfully kept his presence to a minimum for the full meal. He was slumped over even now, just toying with his silverware. His parents practically only talked to you. Most attempts to entice him into the conversation failed. It wasn't difficult for him to say so little. He at least tried to participate. You didn't get much time to contemplate Cove's situation, because your attention was taken by Mr. Holden's pointedly clearing his voice. That doesn't sound like a broken record.
What?
But thanks for coming, Callie. I'm glad we finally got a chance to have you over for a real dinner.
What?
What? Did I hear that right? This is the first time Callie's ever had dinner here. Why in the world haven't you invited them over sooner? Cove was always the one going over to Callie's house until now. I mean, how was I supposed to reject the generous offers of the Wolf family to host my kid? Kyra shook her head, but the amused smile she was sporting told you that she wasn't actually mad. This guy, honestly. The three of you looked at Cove in unison, the small sound being more than enough to get the focus on him after his silence. By now he stopped fiddling with his fork.
I mean...
Would it be alright for Callie to stay over, like for the night? He shot you a shy glance, then, smiling a little. If you're cool with that. Mr. Holden's shoulders stiffened. He sat up straighter, his eyes darting back and forth between you and Cove. His mouth opened, but not he came out. You'd never seen Cove's dad say no to him before, but this was different than the usual request. Then Cove's mom reached out and took a hold of his shirt collar. He pulled him closer. He glanced at you before leaning in and bringing a hand up from the faces. The two adults whispered seriously to each other. Cove's eyes opened wider. He leaned forward as if that would help him overhear his parents' conversation. Mr. Holden kept gesturing with his hands, while Kyra made sure he didn't get too far away with his movements. Every now and then, they would both watch you and Cove out the corner of their eyes. But it didn't seem like they were fighting to you. They looked more like some kind of sports team having a private huddle. After a bit, they broke the group up. They moved back to sit properly in their chairs. You snuck a look at Cove. He stared at them expectantly. You were eager to hear their verdict too. We, Kyra and I, think that it should be fine, but... He lifted a finger dramatically, his brows raising as he met Cove's gaze, then your own. We'll have to talk with Callie's parents to make sure they're comfortable with it. If they are, we can arrange for a sleepover to happen on a different night, when everyone's more prepared. If Callie's folks don't like the idea, then there's nothing we can do. He finished with the mini speech with a wide shrug, using his full arms. He also checked out Kyra from the corner of his eye, and gave her a crooked smile. She nodded approvingly and grinned back. You thought you saw her give him a thumbs up, but her hand was partly blocked by the table. They looked so pleased with themselves over the answer, but they just passed the actual decision on, whether it was alright or not, to someone else, namely your parents. If this was a sports game, they would have to punt the ball away. Cove hung his head, deflated. He'd been hoping you could stay over today, not some hypothetical time in the future. Hey, you could always try sneaking into my room again. Cove's eyes sparkled at the suggestion. You wouldn't be surprised to have him knocking on your window sometime. Though he still would without the invite. With that, dinner finally came to an end. Mr. Holden stood up from the table and began collecting empty plates. Cove was asked to help out, which he did with little fuss. Kyra tried to lend a hand as well, but Mr. Holden didn't let her. It seemed she was bad from cleaning as well as cooking. You weren't allowed to chip in either, since you were the guest of honor. Although the meal was over, the night wasn't. It looked like you weren't going home just yet after all. You were asked to wait on the couch. While Cove and his dad were cleaning up the mess, Kyra disappeared down the hall after shooting you a wink. It was a bit strange sitting by yourself while everyone else had something to do. Luckily, you weren't alone for too long. After a couple of minutes, Cove's mom returned with a deck of cards in hand. She strode into the room confidently while shuffling. So, who's up for a few rounds? Cove and his dad looked over their shoulders at the question. They were mutually intrigued by the cards in her hands. She beamed at their expressions and stepped further into the living room. Ignoring the couches, she sat cross-legged on the floor by the coffee table. She turned to you and gestured at the space beside her, smiling invitingly. You accepted and followed her lead. The living room carpet was soft, though the hardwood floor underneath could definitely still be felt. Kyra did an overhand shuffle while she waited for the others to finish up their tasks. The smile had yet left her lips.
Great.
This is going to be good. You enjoyed her enthusiasm. Kyra's mom was pretty funny, upbeat, and easygoing. You leaned closer to watch her expertly shuffle the cards. It didn't take much longer for Cove and his dad to wrap things enough to call it good. Cove's dad appeared first, followed closely by Cove. Mr. Holden rubbed his hands together in anticipation. Alright, I'm ready. He took a seat across from you on the floor. You noticed Cove hadn't joined him. He went straight down the hall instead, without a word. You stared confused as he disappeared through his bedroom door. Cove's parents didn't look concerned at the stunt. Kyra nonchalantly split the deck of cards in two and rifled the halves together, while offering an explanation of sorts. Cove doesn't keep his wallet with him when at home. He puts it away. What? Cove quickly returned to the living room, a black wallet in hand. He took a place at the foot of the table with the rest of you. You blinked as Cove unzipped his wallet. You all use real money on card games with family? While you sat there, your hands idle in your lap. The three shot looks at one another and sized each other out.
Yeah.
That's right, $5 per person. Winner takes all. Go big or go home. Oh, are you planning on kicking Callie to the curb? Or do you intend on donating the guest of honor's part, Mr. High Roller? Yeah, Cliff's a bit of a gambler. Or was a bit of a gambler. He's a card shark, so is Cove. But I don't think Cove's a gambler. Yeah. I think it's just family gambling that he does. Mr. Holden narrowed his eyes and leaned back against the side of the couch, completely at ease.
No worries.
If Callie wants to play, I'll fund their way in. Don't you worry about that. He rested an arm across the top of the knee as he propped up. Cove's dad was acting slick in a way you'd never seen before. He appreciated his offer. Thanks, Mr. Holden. His tone and stance instantly became more friendly when he started directing his words to you. No problem, you can count on me. You can let me pay for Callie. They're my friend. Mr. Holden grinned with a chuckle.
Good kid.
Alright, bud. I concede. You're too polite for me. Well, you got your ticket. Interested in throwing in? You glanced around. This seemed like serious business. In response to your consternation, Kyra softened her competitive smile. Don't worry too much. We'll probably just do some rounds of Go Fish tonight. No biggie.
Do you mind?
What do you think? You joined in. I'd love to play. Mr. Holden gave you a big thumbs up while Cove nodded family back. You were really good at Go Fish. You usually won when you played with your own family, to the point Elizabeth refused to play that game with you anymore. Fantastic. We'll play for however long everyone wants to keep going, until people start running out of cash, but are still refusing to quit while they're behind. Speaking for yourself, I see. With a laugh, Kyra nudged you using an elbow, then motioned to the other two with her chin. Ow. Don't be fooled by their soft faces. These boys are sharks. In her reaction, Mr. Holden smirked and Cove's eyebrows became more angled. Kyra's phrasing to you made you think back to when you were young, specifically of Mr. Holden's favorite shark pants that he used to wear all the time. Perhaps they had been a fit for him in ways you didn't know. You could feel the tension in the air. Cove and his parents glued their eyes to one another, then all placed a $5 bill in the empty space in front of them. Cove dropped an extra one for you, giving you a tiny smile after he did. Once this was done, Kyra began dealing out cards to everyone. It was time to begin. The first round came and went quickly, with the group getting into the groove of things. You won right away, which meant you had more money to keep playing the second round. You're a natural. Nicely done. You better keep those wits about you for the next round, though. As the night went on, so did the games. Mr. Holden would jokingly shake his fist whenever someone other than him got a pair. Kyra acted as a news anchor, reporting on every move everyone made, by speaking into her curled fist. There was still a few of words, but it was now because he was focused on the game instead of being overcome with awkwardness. Most of the time, you would even smile on his lips. You won quite a few games to your delight. You had a hefty amount of honey. You had a hefty money pile on your side of the table. You must regret paying Callie's way in now, huh? No way. Callie might be beating me, but they're also beating you two. Trev turned towards you and smiled, looking pleased at your ability to match his mom and dad. You grinned at him, touched by his speedy comeback. It became clear that where the money went in the moment didn't really matter. They ended up giving it back to one another in ways not just through more rounds of cards. You sat back, looking over at the scene. A tiny smile grew on your face. Cove's family was pretty cool, you thought. You were glad you got this chance to come over and spend time with the three of them. And that is all we have for step 2, I'm afraid. We've done all the DLCs that we have, and we've done the non-DLCs. It's time for some to end, and we'll be doing that in the next video. Thanks for stopping by to everyone who did, and I will see you in our transition video into step 3. Bye for now.